Of every 3 languages spoken on Earth today, 1 belongs to Africa. Not 100 languages, not 500, around 2,000. Why did one continent come to hold a third of all human speech? That is the question, and the answer is the story of humanity itself. Let us start with what is actually there. Nobody agrees on the exact count. Between 1,500 and 2,500 living languages, even the counting is a battle. Take Nigeria, one country, more than 500 languages. That is more than all of Europe combined. Take Cameroon, a country about the size of Spain, nearly 300 languages, some spoken in a single town and nowhere else on Earth. In the highlands and river valleys, a language can belong to one hill, cross the water, and the words change, cross the ridge, and they change again. Linguists sort this ocean into 4 great families: Niger-Congo, Afro-Asiatic, Nilo-Saharan, and the Click languages of the south. Niger-Congo is not just Africa's largest family, it is the largest language family on Earth. Around 1,500 languages. One family, 1/5 of all human speech. In the Kalahari, the Ta language uses more than 100 distinct speech sounds. Clicks made with the tongue, sharp as snapping wood. English uses about 44. And on Madagascar, a surprise. Malagasy is not African at all. Its closest relatives are spoken in Borneo, 4,000 miles across the open ocean. Sailors carried it here more than 1,000 years ago. So the variety is real, staggering. But none of that answers the question, why here? The first answer is buried in your own bones. Humanity was born in Africa. Every human alive descends from people who lived here, and so does every human word. Language has existed in Africa longer than anywhere else on Earth, not centuries longer, tens of thousands of years longer. When small bands left the continent, they carried a sliver of that speech into Asia, into Europe, into the Americas. Africa kept the whole tree. The rest of the world grew from cuttings. Time is the first engine of difference. 6,000 years ago, one language became English, Hindi, Russian, and 400 others. Africa has had language for perhaps 100,000 years. Do the mathematics. The second answer is the land itself. Africa is not one landscape. It is rainforest, desert, savanna, mountain, swamp, coast. Look at the map. The Sahara in the north, the Congo forest at the heart, the Rift Valley in the east, the Kalahari in the south. Every zone is a different way of living. Every barrier is a nursery for new speech. A community rooted in one fertile valley for 1,000 years does not need its neighbors' words. The river feeds them, the hill shields them, the language stays, and slowly becomes its own. Where travel is hard, difference accumulates. The Cameroon grass fields, the Nuba Mountains of Sudan, the Ethiopian highlands, each one a library of tongues. The third answer is how people chose to live. For most of its history, Africa was not a continent of vast empires. It was a continent of communities, thousands of them, each with its own name for the world. Ask yourself, how many languages do you speak? In much of Africa, that question sounds strange. The average person speaks 3 or 4. Multilingualism is not an achievement there, it is ordinary life. One language for home, one for the market, one for school or prayer. Languages were never walls, they were rooms in the same house. Europe would later call them dialects. Primitive, simple. Linguists proved the opposite. Grammar as intricate as Greek, sound systems richer than any in Europe. There is nothing simple here. And then there is the greatest language journey in human history. It begins around 5,000 years ago near the border of today's Nigeria and Cameroon. Farming villages begin to move, east along the forest's edge, south down the coast, generation by generation, field by field. Over 4,000 years, they cross half a continent. They carry yams, they carry iron, and they carry their language. As they spread, it splinters into roughly 500 languages we now call Bantu. Swahili, Zulu, Xhosa, Shona, Kikongo, Lingala, all of them cousins, all of them children of one ancient mother tongue. You can still hear the family resemblance. The word for person, Muntu, for people, Bantu. That is what Bantu means, simply the people. And Africa wrote. GA's script in Ethiopia, 17 centuries old and still in use. Tifana in the Sahara, Nsibidi in the Nigerian forest. African languages in Arabic letters called Ajami, Then, in the winter of 1884, 14 powers gather in Berlin. They draw Africa's borders on a map. Most of them have never set foot on the continent. The lines cut through everything. By one count, the new borders split at least 177 peoples between 2 or more countries. Colonial schools installed colonial tongues: English, French, Portuguese. Children were punished for speaking their mother's language in the classroom. And when independence came, the new nations faced an impossible choice. A country with 60 languages cannot crown one without crowning one people over the rest. So many chose the colonizers' tongue instead. Neutral, foreign, safe. Tanzania chose differently. Julius Nyerere raised Swahili, an African language born on the coast, owned by no single people, into the voice of the whole nation. It worked, but not every language survived the century. In South Africa, one of the oldest sound systems on Earth came down to a handful of elderly speakers. One of them, Uma Katrina Esau, opened a school in her own home, teaching children the clicks of her childhood, so the words would not die with her. She is not alone in that fight. Hundreds of African languages now have only a few thousand speakers left. By some estimates, somewhere on Earth, a language falls silent every few weeks. So hold the question honestly. 2,000 languages. Blessing or burden? Here is the case against. A child schooled in a language she does not speak at home starts every lesson a step behind. Trade, law, government, all pay a translation tax. And division between tongues has been easy for others to exploit. And here is the case for. Every language is a library, a map of rivers, medicines, stars, and songs written over thousands of years. Lose the language, lose the library. Unity of speech builds nations. Diversity of speech carries memory. Africa holds both truths at once. Nobody has won that argument yet. But remember where we started. Of every 3 languages spoken on Earth, one is African. The continent where humanity first learned to speak never stopped.